Thank you so much for joining us here. We had a couple of questions for people who contacted us, having looked at the course and are excited about getting that and tucking into all your amazing knowledge. We've got a few questions here I figured I'd love to ask you, and thanks very much for quickly joining us today. First one is, where is the money that used to be in yesterday's CD sales gone in today's music industry?
I suppose on a very basic level, the money, people pay money to listen to music, and it's just done a different way. I mean, one of the gripes in the first instance about the comparison between CD, the world of CDs, and the now world of streaming is that in the past, record companies were manufacturers of goods, if you like. You know, they had to manufacture CDs, they had to warehouse them, they had to distribute them to record stores. And now all of that cost has gone out of the equation, but the income source, of course, has changed as well. Streaming is paid. There's a block of money that the streaming services apportion between the different tracks that are streamed, but there's actually no distribution cost for the record company. Their only costs really are in marketing and in the creation, supporting the creation of music, yet the royalties have remained the same despite there being a lot less kind of capital investment involved. And that's been a source of controversy, but unfortunately the streaming market is now sufficiently mature that I don't think we're going to change it.
Yeah.
So I just need to cut off.
Oh, that's fine. We can cut that, don't worry. We've got another question here. What's a lesson you've learned the hard way in your career? We've all got a few of them.
My background's quite unusual in that I started life as an illegal rave promoter, sort of gravitated towards being a pirate radio presenter and DJ, and have found myself now still being a DJ, but being, of course, a specialist music lawyer. And the irony of somebody who now calls himself an expert in all things business affairs is that actually I didn't treat my business affairs seriously enough when I was younger, and therefore occasionally sort of economized on lawyers, because although I had a law degree, I was in no way sort of qualified or competent at the very specialist area of law that is music and entertainment law. Economized on that, didn't pay for lawyers on occasion where I should have done, and actually signed very bad deals. And because I had this name, this kind of DJ moniker, Judge Jules, dare I say it, I didn't have the guts to admit that actually I didn't know very much about it at the time. And I guess that was, you know, in many ways a false economy, because the majority of lawyers out there, if are clearly successful and sort of, dare I say it, quite savvy artist comes in your direction, you're not going to simply charge them the earth. You want good potential clients, but I just didn't really try it out as much as I should have done. I mean, I did have a lawyer on occasion, but far less than I should have done.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you. Another question that's come in, how does copyright in sync work? And it's a two-part question, actually. What is whitelisting and how does it work?
Well, I guess those two questions are pretty much unrelated, so we'll deal with them one by one. So copyright in sync works. So for the uninitiated, sync quite simply means the synchronization of music with moving images. It could be still images, I suppose, theoretically, but predominantly what sync means is using somebody's music in film or in TV, and I suppose the same applies to games or apps as well. And the first thing to understand is that there are two rights involved. In just about any exploitation of music, there are two sets of rights. There's the rights in the recording and there's the rights in the song. And the best way to explain the distinction between the two is where somebody does a cover version. So if I decide to do a cover version, I always use the rather obvious and easy example of the Beatles, because everybody pretty much knows that Lennon and McCartney wrote the Beatles records. So if I, as an artist, recording artist, do a cover version of Let It Be, for example, I don't own any rights in the songwriting. Lennon and McCartney own the rights in the song, but I would, assuming that I created the track myself in my own studio or paid for it in somebody else's studio, I do own the rights in the recording. So there are two separate copyrights involved. The song and the recording, of course, as compared to if I actually did write the song myself and went and recorded it, in which case I would own the rights in both those separate copyrights. So when you need when you want to do a sync, you have to clear both those sets of rights. That can be straightforward or that can be easy, but you need to clear both. So if I'm a movie producer, if I'm a TV production house and I want to use a particular piece of music, then that has been recorded by somebody else, I need to clear both those sets of rights.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what about the second part of that question? I know you said it was quite different rather. What is whitelisting and how does that work?
Well, what whitelisting means is having a relationship as a business with those entities that might get you pulled down. So, for example, I have a syndicated radio show and podcast in my DJ capacity, stepping out of my lawyer role. I've got a relationship with certain labels with whom they will whitelist me as a podcast so that nobody will come along and say, well, I'm infringing their rights by including their music in my podcast. Right. So another example will be some of the people, the musicians and or DJs who do live streaming, who might have a whitelisting with YouTube so that they can go onto YouTube, include their music, and then not being some sort of computer says no algorithm which decides that the use of the music is infringing and therefore needs to be yanked down. So that's what whitelisting is all about. Unfortunately, quite often it's about relationships and having a connection within those entities, whether it's Spotify or YouTube or whatever really, who you can actually converse with and tell them that you need to be whitelisted. And getting connections within those entities is not necessarily all that easy.
Yeah, understood. Brilliant. That's really insightful. I wasn't aware of that. One final question, I think, coming in, and then I've probably just got the final one for you as it happens. How do you balance your life being a DJ and a music lawyer? Well, a lot of the DJ side, I mean, I've been a DJ for basically 2/3 of my life, virtually, or at least 50% of my life. And there's a lot of work in listening to records. You can't simply go out there and trade off the fact you've got a name that's existed for a long time. You're only as good as your last gig. But actually it's a lot more process driven, that each week is more similar as a DJ than it will be as a lawyer, in that you listen to new records, you make sure you're on top of what's going on, you make some music, and I record my weekly podcast and syndicated radio show. But I know how long that's going to take. I know what tasks are necessary. I've got a PA actually who helps me narrow down the huge volume of new releases to something palatable, something I then listen to. But it's predictable. I know what I'm going to do at any part of the given week. Like on Thursdays, for example, I record my radio show. On Sundays, Sunday nights, I listen to all my promos. Being a lawyer is very different because whilst I've got a vast array of clients, and especially in the sort of UK black music and the global electronic music space, I've got a really, really big client base. You never know what's going to be in the inbox next day. You never know what challenge is going to be there. And I've been a lawyer for 10 years now, so there's nothing that I can't deal with at a very high level, especially given I'm an artist and I kind of view it through a different prism. But you never quite know. There's going to be a lot of hours. But it's extremely unpredictable. I mean, I guess the only way to balance the two, given that there's a lot of hours involved, is, I've got 2 kiddies, but they're both sort of near enough grown up. If I had very small children who actually want their parents to be around, it would be a bit more complicated to do both. Whereas actually my kids would prefer that I just stayed out the way and got on with things, So, but I guess it takes a lot of hours because it's very important to me to do both as if I was doing that as my sole job. Yeah, brilliant. And how long did it take you to train as a lawyer? I mean, it's the same for everybody, I guess. Did you have to go and do a degree or articles or? Yeah, I mean, I had a degree in law from when I was 21, but I didn't use it for quite some time. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I started looking at DJing, and the thing about DJing was there was no way of knowing whether that was a career that could perpetuate until you dropped, literally, or you decided you didn't want to work anymore. So I thought, well, I've got to give myself something else, utilizing the skills I've got. Unbeknown to me, actually, the DJ career would continue to flourish very nicely, thankfully. But
So I went back, had to redo my law degree, had to redo had to do professional qualifications, did them as slowly as I could, did them while I was traveling, while I was touring around the world on planes and in hotel rooms. And then I went and did what's called a traineeship in another law firm. And all of that collectively took me about 6 years before I qualified. So I could have done it a bit more quickly, but it wouldn't really have worked alongside being a DJ and sort of touring and having a lot of other stuff going on. And you know, fast forward probably 10 years plus from when I first started that point, here I am now.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, real dedication to the cause there. And and finally, I guess my question to you is, who do you think this course is sort of aimed at, and what would they expect to get out of it?
Well, the one thing I've learned over the years, having known some really very globally successful musicians, some of whom I grew up with, is that there is no, it's not good enough to just be great at making records. Every one of my really successful musician friends that I did grow up with were super business savvy. And it's not to say that they didn't have management and didn't have lawyers to kind of, if you like, facilitate the business decisions, but they were super business savvy themselves. And I think it's actually more rather than less important to adopt that mindset now, because you've got to be a jack of all trades to be a successful musician in an era where there's never been more music coming out every day, let alone every week or month. You've just got to be great at everything. You've got to, it goes without saying, you've got to create unbelievable content, great music, but you've also got to be good at marketing yourself, good at kind of the audio visual side of things. And a part of that equation is being great at business as well.
Brilliant. Jules, thank you so much for joining us. And I know it's very kind of you if you agree to drop in again sometime next month. I think there's going to be more and more people who are interested to hear these little sessions with you. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, for taking part with Tileyard Education and Music Gurus for creating this incredible course, Legals and Deals, out there now on Music Gurus. Thanks, everyone.